as an in-house counsel, what is your first step when an employment discrimination or sexual harassment case comes in and hits your desk?
The first step is really contacting the people who are involved, which usually means the HR department, and seeing what happened. Because believe it or not, and this is going to be an insight maybe for some of your viewers think that, like, in the corporation, everybody knows about your case, what happened to you, who the bad guy is, what they're doing, all this other stuff. And half the time there are people who are like, I have no idea, their supervisor quit. Are they still even an employee? So you're basically just tracking to find out, who the plaintiff was, what their role was in the company. Usually they're not still around a lot of the times. It kind of depends. And then who was doing the wrong, and are there any documents involved, and was there any reporting, and was it at our site, was it a third party site, was it one instance, was it 20 instances, have they been warned before, have they never been heard, is this the first time we're hearing about it, is the employee been there for a week, who's been, who's allegedly been the victim of all this, or are they somebody who we know and trust? So it's literally just gathering up all the basic facts. And that's why it's really helpful when the plaintiff's attorney comes and says, here's what we know. And then you're like, okay, well, if that's what you know, how do we deal with it? But not necessarily to make it go away, but to actually look and see, is there an issue here? And if there is an issue here, how then do we resolve it? Because, the resolution, maybe to fight the case, it may be to settle it, but I think people don't realize how much that a lot of corporations, and I mean, again, maybe it's because I'm speaking for mine, but I'm not trying to, but sure, they really do have an empathy for people. It's not like we're thinking, oh gosh, that's great that happened to you. It's not, and if it did, but at the same time, is it just your side of the story? I think all of us can admit that when we have conflict with somebody, that they have the right to tell their story too. And it's not just always the plaintiff's side, which is right. And sometimes plaintiffs even understate their case. And then you're like even more perplexed because you're like, hey, you actually really did, this was worse for you than you're even telling us. And why didn't we know about this guy? So it's a mixed bag. Yeah. But the first step is information gathering. And I would, and usually we contact an outside counsel because the event may have happened in another state where I'm not barred and I'm not going to litigate these things a lot of the times. So I'm having to deal with another attorney. I'm having to figure out what the underlying facts are, where the documents are, who the opposing counsel are. It makes a difference. If they're a fly-by-night kind of, if they're just one of these mills which just churn out, ridiculous demand letters based on nothing, and we do get those, then we're going to go a lot harder. But if you are respected as a reasonable counsel on the other side, I think that's very valuable because you have much more sway in saying, making a call and saying, this is some really bad facts. What do you want to do? And then it leaves us that obligation to really take, your credibility as a person who's, we trust in a way, even though you're an opponent. Whereas if we deal with attorneys who are, I've had some attorneys who are completely mentally, they're the victims as much as their clients, right? And when you deal with them, it becomes really hard, and it's hard to bridge gaps. It's even hard to negotiate because they're so invested. So you want somebody who has that credibility on the other side. You want to do the right information gathering. You want to look at the law. You want to talk to other counsel, and then you want to meet with, the relevant actors and say, how do we get this resolved? Or is this something we want to take to a trial? Is it something that we want to make a quick offer to resolve? Do we need, and also more importantly, what do we do about this employee who may remain, who may still be there, who's got some issues? Yeah, so it's a big thing.
That's so important for people to hear.
One quick example. I had a case where, and I just to be sort of narrow about it, there were these two employees, professionals, who allegedly recorded people in a bathroom, right? And they were both middle-aged men. They barely knew, they had only worked together a few times and so on. And that was the allegation. And there were a lot of bad facts in the sense that there was a lot of very suspicious behavior. But at the end of the day, the judge didn't see it our way. And I think in part, the judge was kind of like, wait a minute, you're telling me that these two random middle-aged men were looking to watch people in a bathroom using, camera equipment or something, of all sexes, of all sizes, because it was a very public facility. Literally, the public used it, right?
Sure.
And, to be honest with you, it was like, yeah, I just don't see 240, one guy's in his, 40, one's 50 something, getting together and just saying, yeah, let's put a camera in a bathroom so we can watch all manner of person. It's not like it's going to be their preference of whatever their types are, right? You're seeing everybody in the public use it for that one opportunity to see somebody you find attractive use a bathroom. Like it was such a weird, but at the end of the day, I could see it. So but because of other factors, it seemed like a really, like it could have happened, right? Like they could have done it. And there was video involved, although it didn't show anything, but they clearly they had faked creating a camera. It was this weird whole scenario or this whole recording. So anyway, the bottom line comes to this though. It didn't pass the smell test at a common sense level, but we were so deep into it. And there were so many weird things that the company did that it kind of almost misled us into overlooking the common sense of like, hey, did this really like, what would the motivation have been of these two men? I mean, it just doesn't, you could, it's possible, they could be like when two meteors collide in the sky, it happens. But in this particular one, we didn't prevail. So, because we lost sight of that common sense approach. And I think that's hard to bear in mind as an attorney, to always keep that in the back of your mind. Does this pass the just general smell test? Or am I so deep into the facts and the legal arguments and to, things they may have, somebody might have done wrong, but the substance of it just seems less likely. So it's tough dealing with those human beings. And, the other thing is that the work environment now is just so charged. I mean, not to take a different side, maybe and I'm not representing myself in the sense of a defense, an in-house person, but I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, workplaces are supposed to be very sanitized now, in the sense of less sexual innuendo. You don't want to ask people on date. Like in general, there's this idea that it needs to be very equitable, very egalitarian, very inclusive, and also essentially devoid of human emotion. And I'm just going to present this possibility to you. If in workplaces we remove the chance for people to find their girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever you want to call it, we kind of suppress that, which for the good, right? Because we don't, because corporations don't want to lose money. So they're like, nope, no more, no. And you can't be flirtatious with a subordinate or even with somebody in your department. You shouldn't date your employee, none of that. And I get it. There's a lot of good that comes as a result of that safety. But if you add up the time we are sleeping, and then you say, okay, how much are you at work? And for a lot of people, it's like, from like 7:30 to 6, depending on, time frames and so on. I mean, by the time you get to work and you leave there and all that, it's a large part of your day. And then you have sleep, and then you have whatever time you have for yourself. Where's anybody going to meet anybody? Like, I'm all in favor of non-harassing workplaces and places which are very egalitarian. But if we can't exchange views about these things, because everybody there, the class, everybody's very protected in a sexual or framework, and then also in a it's all manner, like I can't really say that I know that nobody can say that they know that I'm a Hispanic person with a part Jewish background, and that I happen to be heterosexual, whatever. If we can't engage each other in that way in work, and certainly not in sleep, then we have a very minimal amount of time to really know each other. And I'm not saying that all these rules and regulations don't make a lot of sense. They do, but I do have a concern larger than law, which is like, you see a lot of very lonely, depressed people. And where's that coming from? I don't know that the workplace is making us better as a society. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong on that. It's just an observation. There's a cost. There's a cost. There's that
definitely a cost.
Workplace.
Yeah, there's definitely a cost. And I mean, I certainly know a lot of people who did end up meeting their life partner, their spouse, whatever it is, in the workplace. But I do kind of view it Like I'll have this conversation with buddies all the time who are trying to flirt with the waitress. And I'll just be like, listen, guy, captive audience, she can't get away from you. So like, what are we doing? Right. And I get it. We spend a lot of time at work, but pretty notably, we can't get away from each other at work. And that's a problem. I don't want to be the guy who says, go on the apps or something like that, but
Yeah.
it's a tough problem to have
Right.
people.
Well, there's 7 billion people on the world. Why do you have to date the one who happens to work with you? Right. Like that's kind of the whole thing.
And God forbid you date that person or don't get rejected by that person. And now what? The next 3 years, every time you see each other, it's bad.